Welcome to Crimes and Mysteries. Today we will explore one of the most intriguing and terrifying cases in the criminal history of the United States, the infamous Zodiac Killer. A killer who defied authorities, terrorized California, and whose true identity remains a mystery. The Zodiac was more than just a serial killer. He was a master manipulator, obsessed with mind games. In one of his letters he claimed to have killed 37 people, but authorities were only able to confirm 5 cases. What makes this case even more disturbing is that, to this day, no one has been able to identify who he was. It was the night of December 20, 1968, a cold night in Vallejo, California. Teenagers Betty Lou Jensen and David Faraday were on what should have been a romantic date. But when they parked their car on remote Lake Herman Road, their night turned into a living nightmare. The Zodiac appeared without mercy and shot them at point-blank range. David was killed instantly while Betty Lou tried to flee but was shot multiple times in the back. This was just the beginning. The city of Vallejo was shaken, but no one could have imagined what was to come. Fast forward to the summer of 1969, and the next attack occurred on July 4, Independence Day, a symbolic date marked by fireworks and celebrations, but which would end in terror. Darlene Ferrin, 22, and Mike Mago, 19, were enjoying the evening when a man approached their vehicle, shining a flashlight at the couple before firing multiple shots. Darlene did not survive her injuries, but Mike, despite being seriously injured, managed to survive and provided police with a description of the killer. A mysterious white man, around 30 years old, with short hair and an ordinary appearance. And then, just a few months later in September 1969, the Zodiac struck again, this time with a different modus operandi. On September 27, 1969, Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard were relaxing on the shores of Lake Berryessa when a masked man approached them. He wore an outfit reminiscent of a medieval executioner, with a white circle and cross symbol on his chest. Armed with a knife and a gun, he tied them up before brutally stabbing them. Cecilia fought for her life, but unfortunately passed away 2 days later in the hospital. Brian, however, survived to tell his story. Finally, on October 11, 1969, the Zodiac committed his most audacious crime. Paul Stein, a 29-year-old taxi driver, was shot dead in San Francisco's Presidio Heights neighborhood, but this time the Zodiac came close to being captured. Several young people witnessed the killer cleaning the taxi before disappearing into the night. Despite the authorities quickly arriving at the scene, the Zodiac escaped again, leaving only a sketch as a clue. Among all the mysteries left by the Zodiac Killer, one of the most fascinating and frustrating was the series of coded letters sent to local newspapers. He not only claimed responsibility for the murders but also challenged the public and the police to solve his enigmas. These letters were not just confessions, but also threats and an invitation to a deadly game. The first encrypted letter, known as Zodiac 408, was sent in 3 parts to different local newspapers: the San Francisco Chronicle, the San Francisco Examiner, and the Vallejo Times-Herald. The killer demanded that the letters be published on the front page of the newspapers or he would claim more victims. He claimed that his code contained the revelation of his identity, and if someone could decipher it they would understand the reason behind his crimes. Amazingly, this code was broken in a matter of days by an ordinary couple, Donald and Betty Harden. But instead of a bombshell revelation, the code carried a disturbing message that read,
"I like killing people because it is more fun than killing wild game. In the forest, because man is the most dangerous animal of all."
For decades, Cipher 340, sent in November 1969, challenged the world's best cryptographers and amateur detectives. However, in December 2020 during the COVID-19 pandemic, a trio of experts finally cracked the code using computer programs and linguistic analysis techniques. The deciphered message said,
"I hope you are having lots of fun in trying to catch me. I am not afraid of the gas chamber. Because it will send me to paradise all the sooner, because I now have enough slaves to work for me."
Now that we understand the brutality and mystery behind the Zodiac Killer's crimes, it's time to explore the main suspects who, over the decades, have captured the attention of investigators, journalists, and the general public. Could any of them be hiding the Zodiac's true identity? Suspect number 1, Arthur Lee Allen. Arthur Lee Allen, and perhaps the best-known suspect in the Zodiac case. He was a convicted child abuser, and was first identified as a suspect in 1971. Evidence against him. Allen owned a Zodiac watch, which had the same symbol used by the killer in his letters, a circle with a cross. He discussed with friends the idea of hunting humans, something similar to what the Zodiac referenced in his letters. An old friend reported that Allen said he wanted to be called Zodiac. Allen lived near many of the Zodiac crime scenes and frequented the same areas. Problems in the case against him. His fingerprints and DNA do not match those found at the crime scenes or on clues left by the killer. Experts concluded that his handwriting did not match the Zodiac letters. Despite these inconsistencies, many still believe that Allen was a strong candidate to be the Zodiac killer. Suspect number 2, Richard Gajkowski. Richard Gajkowski was a journalist working at a newspaper in the San Francisco Bay Area during the Zodiac murders. Evidence against him suggests that Gajkowski had an interest in ciphers and codes similar to those used by the Zodiac, and some people who heard the Zodiac's voice on phone calls reported that Gajkowski's voice was uncannily similar. He was known to use the nickname Gike, which sounded similar to Zodiac in coded references. During the period of the Zodiac murders, Gajkowski took an extended leave of absence from work, something that was considered suspicious. Problems in the case against him. There is no definitive physical evidence linking him to the crimes. His handwriting does not conclusively match the Zodiac letters. Suspect number 3, Lawrence Kane. Lawrence Kane, a former Navy veteran who worked as a merchant seaman, had a history of mental illness and brain injuries resulting from a car accident. Evidence against him. Kane lived near where several of the Zodiac's victims were killed. Kathleen Jones, a woman who claimed to have been kidnapped by the Zodiac in 1970, identified Kane as her abductor. Kane's Navy training in codes made him a plausible suspect. A police officer who saw a man shortly after Paul Stein's murder stated that Kane matched the description. Problems in the case against him. There is no definitive forensic evidence linking him to the case. Some experts believe that Kane's brain injury would have made it difficult for him to write the complex letters attributed to the Zodiac. Suspect number 4, Ross Sullivan. Ross Sullivan was a library assistant working in the library at Riverside City College, near where potential Zodiac victim Sherry Jo Bates was murdered in 1966. Evidence against him. Sullivan disappeared shortly after Bates' murder, and had a reputation for morbid subjects. He wore military-style boots similar to the ones that left footprints at the scenes of Zodiac's crimes. Colleagues noted that he acted strangely after Bates' murder, and that he had a similar appearance to police sketches of the Zodiac. Problems in the case against him. There is no concrete evidence linking him to the Zodiac murders, other than circumstantial observations. His mental health issues and erratic behavior make it difficult to establish a clear motive or timeline. Suspect number 5, Gary Francis Post. Gary Francis was identified as a suspect in 2021 by an independent group called the Case Breakers. Evidence against him. Post had facial scars that reportedly matched the Zodiac sketches, and people who knew him claimed he had a violent personality. The Case Breakers linked Post to the Zodiac, through similarities between his life and the crime scenes. They claimed that anagrams in the Zodiac letters could be solved using Post's full name. Problems in the case against him. Critics argue that the evidence is largely circumstantial, and police authorities have not officially named him as a suspect. There are doubts about the credibility and methodology of the investigation carried out by the Case Breakers. In addition to the 5 suspects who were named in this video, during these years of investigation many more names have emerged. Such as Bruce Davis, a member of the Manson family, who was in California during the murders. Some theorize that he may have connections to the Zodiac due to his ties to the cult. Another name was that of Rick Marshall, a cinema operator and radio enthusiast who some believe used his communications skills to send the Zodiac letters. The Zodiac Killer case remains one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in criminal history, with so many suspects and so many theories. The question remains, will we ever discover the true identity of the killer? What do you think? Which of these suspects seems more convincing, or do you have another theory? Leave your opinion in the comments. We want to know all your theories and ideas about this chilling mystery. Stay tuned for more mysteries here at Crimes and Mysteries. And remember, every mystery has a story, but not always an answer.